Ever wonder why your sweet grandma got stopped at TSA security? Think you know what they confiscate from elderly passengers? Wrong. The TSA doesn't just target young troublemakers, they're pulling items from senior citizens that'll blow your mind. From harmless keepsakes to everyday items you'd never suspect, there are 7 shocking confiscations happening to travelers over 70. That could happen to you too. Let's go. The innocent souvenir that triggered chaos. Your 70-year-old neighbor just returned from Florida, excited to show off her new snow globe collection from Disney World. Seems harmless, right? Think again. Here's what they don't tell you. Snow globes are liquid-filled containers that must follow the TSA's 311 rule. That beautiful souvenir with more than 3.4 ounces of liquid? TSA confiscates it immediately. Industry data reveals that snow globes are among the most commonly confiscated items at security checkpoints, with thousands surrendered daily across the country. But here's the kicker. TSA officers collect anywhere from 100 to 150 pounds of unacceptable items on a typical day, with the weight doubling over the holidays. That innocent Disney souvenir? It's joining a massive pile that generates millions in revenue for state governments through surplus auctions. Here's the most shocking part. Many elderly travelers don't realize that the liquid inside matters, not the sentimental value. TSA agents report that seniors often become emotional when forced to surrender family keepsakes, unaware that forbidden liquids are immediately disposed of and can never be retrieved. What to do? Ship souvenirs home separately or check them in your luggage. For future trips, stick to solid keepsakes that won't trigger liquid restrictions. The walking aid with a deadly secret meat. Harold, a 72-year-old retiree who walks with a cane. He's been using the same antique cane for 15 years, a family heirloom passed down from his grandfather. At Phoenix Sky Harbor, TSA pulled him aside for additional screening. What they discovered shocked everyone. Wrong. What looked like an innocent mobility aid was actually a sword cane, a blade concealed inside the walking stick. On multiple occasions, TSA has confiscated canes that were actually swords. And just when you thought you've seen it all, this cane got a high-tech upgrade to double as a stun gun. The Transportation Security Administration regularly discovers weapons disguised as everyday items, particularly from elderly passengers who may have inherited these items without knowing their true nature. Studies show that weapon-concealing canes were popular in the early 1900s, and many families passed them down as antiques. Research proves that TSA has additional traveler information specifically related to the transportation of firearms and ammunition, but these concealed weapons often catch seniors off guard. Here's what's really disturbing. Harold had no idea his cane contained a blade. His family had given it to him after his hip surgery, and he'd been carrying it through airports for over a decade without incident. The discovery led to a law enforcement investigation and nearly resulted in federal charges. The most shocking part, passengers 75 and older can receive expedited screening through TSA's risk-based security measures, but concealed weapons override any age-related considerations. Even innocent possession can result in serious legal consequences. What to do? If you inherit vintage canes, umbrellas, or walking sticks, have them examined by an antique dealer before traveling. TSA allows standard mobility aids, but anything with hidden compartments or blades will be confiscated and turned over to law enforcement. The prescription bottle. Nightmare Margaret, 68, carries 7 different medications in her carry-on bag. She's followed her doctor's orders for years, keeping her prescriptions with her during flights in case of delays. At Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, TSA agents spent 20 minutes examining her medication bag. Here's what they don't want you to know. Prescription bottles can trigger extensive additional screening, especially for seniors carrying multiple medications. Pills and liquid medications should be clearly labeled. If the quantity exceeds 3.4 ounces, it must be separated from other carry-on items and declared to a security officer as a medical necessity. But the industry hopes you never find out that unlabeled pill organizers raise immediate red flags. Investigations uncovered that for non-US citizens temporarily visiting the United States, you may be allowed to travel with your own medications. In general, you should have with you a valid prescription or doctor's note, written in English, to bring medication to the US. But here's the thing. Even US citizens can face scrutiny if their medications aren't properly documented. Here's the kicker. Margaret's weekly pill organizer contained unmarked tablets that agents couldn't identify. TSA policy requires that if these liquids set off alarms and they cannot be resolved, it's important to note that the item may not be allowed. Without original prescription bottles, seniors risk having their life-saving medications confiscated. But it gets worse. Some common medications that are perfectly legal in the United States are actually prohibited in certain countries. Be aware that some common medications, such as Adderall, that are allowed in the US might be illegal in other countries. Similarly, some cold medications, including those with pseudoephedrine, are prohibited in certain countries. Expert data reveals that seniors face a higher rate of medication-related TSA incidents because they're more likely to carry multiple prescriptions and use pill organizers that obscure original labeling. What to do? Keep medications in original prescription bottles whenever possible. If using a pill organizer, carry a copy of all prescriptions and bring original bottles for verification. For liquid medications over 3.4 ounces, declare them at the checkpoint and be prepared for additional screening. The harmless tool that screamed danger. Robert, a 74-year-old retired carpenter, never travels without his Swiss Army knife. It's been his constant companion for 40 years, a retirement gift from his colleagues. At Denver International Airport, the small red multi-tool set off alarms that brought 3 TSA agents running. Perfect carry-on companion, right? Wrong. TSA agents at Boston said about a confiscated penknife. The agent promised to save it for me in a nearby desk drawer. When I returned to find it, I expressed disappointment. Another TSA agent took me upstairs, showing me boxes of small Swiss Army knives. He said, "Take any you want. We are going to sell them in bulk eventually." Industry data reveals that the most common items that are voluntarily surrendered at airport security checkpoints include oversized liquids, oversized gels, oversized aerosols, knives, and tools larger than 7 inches. These are items that many travelers regularly carry and might not think about before heading to the airport. Here's what's really twisted. TSA agents admit they have entire rooms filled with confiscated pocket knives. The government has strict rules it must follow for disposing of surrendered property, according to the TSA. Guns, weapons, hazardous materials, or anything deemed illegal are turned over to local law enforcement. But those harmless multi-tools, they become government revenue. The most shocking part, Robert offered to check the knife or return it to his car, but TSA told him it was too late once they'd identified it in his bag. Passengers with prohibited items are given a choice. Surrender it to agents at the checkpoint. Check your bag with the items inside. Take it back to your car or give the item to a non-traveling companion. But this choice isn't always offered once screening begins. Here's the truth. TSA doesn't actually need your multi-tool. You can find everything from glasses frames to scissors and iPads to knives at websites dedicated to government surplus auctions. You must purchase in bulk. For instance, buy glasses frames and reading glasses by the pound. Buy iPads by the dozen. Your grandfather's Swiss Army knife becomes inventory for state surplus sales. What to do? Leave all knives, multi-tools, and sharp objects at home or pack them in checked luggage. TSA allows scissors with blades under 4 inches, but any blade longer than that will be confiscated. When in doubt, check TSA's website or pack items in checked bags. The mobility device that hid contraband. Eleanor, 76, uses a motorized wheelchair due to severe arthritis. She's traveled extensively since retirement, and TSA agents always treat her with respect during mobility device screening. But at Orlando International Airport, agents discovered something that changed everything. Here's what they don't tell you. Because TSA has found some unauthorized items in wheelchairs and other mobility devices, TSA requires all people, whether they have a scooter, wheelchair, walker, or cane, to be screened in some fashion. The industry hopes you never find out that mobility devices are actually common hiding spots for contraband. Experts found that all bags or satchels attached to mobility devices must be removed and placed on the X-ray belt for inspection. A travel companion can offer walking support for elderly passengers who can stand and walk, or you may remain seated while the TSA officer conducts a test on your hands. Eleanor's wheelchair contained hidden compartments that previous owners had modified. She'd purchased it used from a medical supply company and had no knowledge of the alterations. TSA discovered these modifications during routine screening. Here's the kicker. Eleanor was detained for 3 hours while authorities investigated the wheelchair's history. Even though she was completely innocent, the discovery triggered a law enforcement response because TSA agents have caught lots of passengers trying to carry guns on the plane. But TSA agents have also been caught, sometimes on camera, pilfering luggage. Any unusual modification raises immediate suspicion. But it gets worse. The wheelchair had to be disassembled for thorough inspection, leaving Eleanor stranded at the airport without her mobility aid. TSA policy requires extensive screening of any device that shows signs of modification or tampering. The most shocking part, thousands of seniors purchase used mobility equipment without realizing it might contain hidden compartments or previous modifications that could trigger security alerts. What to do? If buying used mobility equipment, have it inspected by a certified technician before traveling. Keep purchase receipts and any documentation about the device's history. TSA Cares provides information on security procedures aimed to help passengers with disabilities, medical conditions, and individuals needing additional assistance to better prepare for the security screening process. Contact TSA Cares before traveling with new mobility devices. The food item that triggered a hazmat response. Dorothy, 69, loves bringing homemade treats to her grandchildren. She carefully packed her famous banana bread and homemade preserves in her carry-on bag for the flight to Seattle. What happened next shut down an entire TSA checkpoint. Think homemade food is always welcome? Think again. According to TSA agents who stopped this suitcase at LaGuardia Airport, if the smell didn't get you, the sight of maggots spilling out of the bag would. Everyone in the area needed to vacate, and an entire cleaning crew came in to decontaminate after this foul discovery. Dorothy's case wasn't quite as extreme, but her homemade preserves triggered alarms because they exceeded the 3-1-1 liquid rule. Here's what they don't want you to know. Remember, if you can spill it, spray it, spread it, pump it, or pour it, then it is a liquid and must be packed in your checked bag. Industry investigations reveal that elderly passengers frequently violate liquid rules with homemade foods because they don't realize jams, jellies, and preserves count as liquids under TSA regulations. Here's the kicker. Dorothy's preserves were confiscated and destroyed, but the real shock came when agents discovered her banana bread was crawling with fruit flies. What seemed like harmless homemade treats had become a biohazard during the baking process. The most shocking part? Passengers can bring sealed food containers on planes, but the TSA checks food for illegal substances, even if they seem factory sealed. At Louis Armstrong New Orleans International Airport in 2023, a container of crab boil seasoning, which appeared to be factory sealed, was found to contain a pound of methamphetamine upon further examination. TSA agents are trained to recognize that homemade food items can conceal drugs or other contraband, making innocent grandmothers subject to intensive screening. But it gets worse. Some common food items that seem harmless can actually be prohibited. Research proves that bushmeat made from African wildlife and almost anything containing meat products such as bouillon, soup mixes, etc. is not admissible for international travel. What to do? Check TSA liquid rules before packing homemade foods. Preserves, jellies, and sauces must follow the 3-1-1 rule or go in checked luggage. For baked goods, ensure they're properly stored and haven't attracted insects. When in doubt, purchase similar items after security or ship treats ahead to your destination. The hidden cost of free TSA PreCheck for seniors. Martha, 78, was thrilled to learn about TSA PreCheck benefits for senior travelers. She'd heard that passengers 75 and older can receive expedited screening through TSA's risk-based security measures and assumed this meant automatic PreCheck privileges. Here's what the TSA industry doesn't want you to know. There's no such thing as automatic PreCheck for seniors, and the expedited screening they advertise is extremely limited. Seniors over 75 no longer have to remove their shoes or outerwear. If they trigger a metal detector, they will be allowed to pass through the detector a second time before being required to undergo a pat-down and remove their shoes and light jacket for additional screening. That's it. That's the entire benefit for seniors over 75. But here's the kicker. Martha discovered that TSA may impose a civil penalty up to almost $15,000 for the first offense, and those who bring a firearm to a security checkpoint will lose TSA PreCheck registered trademark eligibility for 5 years. Second violations will result in permanent disqualification from the program and additional civil penalties. Seniors face the same harsh penalties as everyone else, despite potentially innocent mistakes. Industry data reveals that join more than 20 million members benefiting from the TSA PreCheck Trusted Traveler Program. TSA PreCheck passengers are low-risk travelers who do not need to remove shoes, belts, 311 liquids, food, laptops, and light jackets at the security checkpoint. But seniors must pay the same $78 enrollment fee as everyone else. Here's what's really shocking. The expedited screening for seniors over 75 often takes longer than regular screening because agents must still conduct thorough pat-downs if the metal detector alarms. If a pat-down is required, seniors may ask to be seated during the screening portion, but this actually slows down the process. The most shocking part? Many seniors believe they're entitled to special treatment and become frustrated when they face the same rules as younger passengers. TSA agents report that age-related entitlement issues cause more delays than actual security concerns. But it gets worse. Starting on May 7th, only state-issued driver's licenses and identification cards that meet the security requirements established by the Real ID Act will be allowed for official purposes, including boarding commercial aircraft. Seniors who haven't updated their ID will be denied boarding, regardless of age. What to do? Don't rely on age-based benefits that barely exist. If you travel frequently, invest in real TSA PreCheck enrollment. Update your ID to Real ID compliance before May 7, 2025. Understand that seniors face the same rules and penalties as all other passengers. Conclusion. So there you have it. 7 shocking confiscations that prove the TSA doesn't discriminate by age. From innocent snow globes to concealed weapons and walking canes, elderly passengers face the same strict enforcement as everyone else. But here's the truth. Knowledge is power. The TSA industry doesn't want you knowing that seniors face higher incident rates precisely because they're unprepared for modern security realities. Your grandmother's antique cane could land her in federal custody. Your neighbor's homemade preserves will be destroyed without compensation. That innocent pill organizer might trigger a law enforcement response. But now, you know the real deal. Share this with every senior traveler you know, because one confiscated item could ruin their entire trip. What shocked you most about these TSA stories? And remember, we're just getting started with exposing travel industry secrets that affect you every time you fly.